I should have said no when my coworker Danny first suggested setting me up with her amazing friend. Blind dates had never been my thing, and spending Valentine's Day making awkward small talk with a stranger sounded like my personal version of hell. But Danny was relentless. "She's funny, she's smart, and she's gorgeous," she insisted, nudging my arm. "Come on, man. One dinner. Worst case, you get an awkward story to tell." She had a point, and after a long shift waiting tables and watching couples clink glasses over overpriced steaks, I figured, why not? Maybe I'd surprise myself. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 was not asking for more details. The restaurant was a small Italian place in River North, dimly lit with the scent of garlic and fresh bread hanging in the air. Nice enough to set the mood, but not overly fancy. I got there a little early, texting Danny to let her know I was on board with this ridiculous setup. Then she walked in. Maya. She was pretty in a clean-cut way. Sharp cheekbones, dark hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, red lipstick that matched her dress. When she smiled, I felt a brief flicker of relief. Maybe this wouldn't be so bad. We ordered drinks, and conversation flowed easily. She was easy to talk to. Laughed at my jokes, asked about my job. I told her about working as a server, and my weirdest customer interactions. The kind of small talk you expect on a first date. Then things got weird. "You must be exhausted," she said, stirring her drink absent-mindedly. After last night's shift, closing that late must have been brutal. I blinked. "How'd you know I closed?" She giggled. "Danny mentioned it." That made sense, but something about the way she said it, casual, like she wasn't thinking about it, rubbed me the wrong way. I shrugged it off and asked her about her job. She worked in marketing, or at least that's what she claimed. Her answers were vague, her explanations oddly rehearsed. But I let it slide. Then the conversation turned to family. I told her about my younger brother, how he'd just started college. "Oh, Loyola, right?" My stomach tightened. I hadn't mentioned the school. "Yeah," I said slowly. "How'd you know that?" She tilted her head, smiling like it was a joke. "You posted about it. The picture at his dorm move-in? So cute." I stared at her. That picture had been posted months ago, buried deep in my feed. Something was off. I glanced at my phone, trying to think of an excuse to leave. Then she mentioned a coffee shop I frequented, describing my usual order with eerie precision. I laughed, assuming she had guessed. "Huh, I've seen you there," she said. "A lot." That was unsettling. I never noticed her before, but she described where I usually sat, how I fidgeted with my phone while waiting for my order. Then she mentioned my apartment building, the route I walked home after work, the laundromat I used. My stomach tightened. These weren't things Danny would have told her. This wasn't casual knowledge. I tried to change the subject, but she leaned in, resting her chin on her hand, eyes fixed on mine. "You think you're hard to follow?" she said, voice barely above a whisper. "You're not." That was it. I needed to leave. The waiter came by, asking if we wanted another round. I shook my head, already standing. "I should get going. Early shift tomorrow." Maya's face didn't change. She just sighed and leaned back in her chair. "I knew you'd try to run." My stomach lurched. I stepped back, nearly knocking into the waiter. "What?" She stood slowly, smoothing her dress. "You always leave places early. Always take the long way home." I tried to keep my voice steady. "How long have you been watching me?" She stared at me like I was the crazy one. "You're overthinking this." I turned and walked out the door into the street, my hands shaking as I pulled out my phone, texting Danny. "Who the hell is Maya? What do you mean? She said you guys were hitting it off." "No, she knows things about me. Personal things." "What?" "She knew about my coffee spot, my brother's college. That's weird, but maybe she just saw stuff online?" I wanted to believe that, I really did. But deep down, I knew better. Then a notification popped up. Unknown number. Running doesn't help, you know? My mouth went dry. I turned, scanning the sidewalk. People walked past, lost in their own worlds. No sign of her, no sign of anyone watching. I bolted home, locking my door the second I got inside. For the next few days, I barely slept. Then the messages started. At first they were harmless. You left so fast I wasn't done talking. Then, you always take 8th Street home, but not tonight. Smart. And then, I'll see you soon. I blocked the number. Switched up my routine, took different routes home. Went to a different coffee shop. I thought that was enough, until Danny pulled me aside at work a week later. She came in again, Danny said, voice low. Asked where you were. I felt sick. What did you tell her? I told her you had the night off, and she just smiled, like she already knew. That night, nothing happened. No more texts. No sign of her. A few days passed. Then a week. Then 2. I started to believe she had finally given up. Maybe she got bored. Maybe she moved on. I let my guard down. Then, one night, I saw her again. I had just finished a late shift and was walking home, the cold biting through my jacket. I was almost at my building when I spotted a figure standing near the entrance. At first, I thought it was a neighbor, but as I got closer, I saw the red dress. She wasn't facing me. She was standing still, staring up at my apartment window. My stomach twisted into knots. My first instinct was to turn back, but I was too close. She had to have seen me. I gritted my teeth and walked past, refusing to look directly at her, acting as if I didn't recognize her. She didn't move, not even when I unlocked the door, not even when I slipped inside and bolted up the stairs 2 at a time. Once I reached my apartment, I pressed myself against the door, waiting, listening. Nothing. The next morning, she was gone. But 2 nights later, something else happened. I woke up to the sound of my phone vibrating against the nightstand, a notification. Groggy, I grabbed it and squinted at the screen. Airdrop request. 1 photo. My breath caught. I didn't recognize the name attached to the request. I swiped it away. Another popped up. 1 photo. Then another, and another. I turned off my phone and lay there in the dark, barely breathing, ears straining for any noise outside my window. But the street was silent. Valentine's Day was never a big deal for me, but Natalie loved it. She wasn't the kind of person who expected grand romantic gestures, but she adored the little things. Fancy dinners, handwritten notes, and overpriced chocolate in heart-shaped boxes. I wasn't great at those things, but I tried because I loved her. This year, we picked a high-end seafood restaurant in Seattle, right on the waterfront. It was one of those places where the waiters wore crisp white shirts, and the scent of garlic butter and fresh seafood filled the air. The tables were close together, and the room buzzed with the soft hum of conversation and clinking glasses. Everything felt normal at first. We ordered wine, joked about how ridiculous it was that they charged $80 for a lobster tail, and listened to the jazz band playing in the corner. Then I noticed him, a man sitting alone at a table near the back. He was older, maybe mid-50s, balding with deep lines around his mouth. He wore a black suit, but it didn't quite fit. The shoulders were too tight, and the sleeves looked just a little too short, like it had belonged to someone else. There was no food in front of him, just a nearly full glass of red wine. But what unsettled me the most was the way he was watching us. Not casually, not in passing, unblinking, focused. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was just a lonely guy spending Valentine's Day alone. Maybe he was waiting for someone. But as the minutes passed, I realized he never looked away. His gaze stayed locked on our table, on Natalie. "Marco?" Natalie's voice pulled me back. I blinked and turned to her. "Yeah? You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just thought I saw someone I knew." She didn't press. I forced myself to focus on her, on our conversation, on my plate of perfectly seared scallops. But every few minutes, my eyes drifted back to the man. He never moved, never touched his wine, just sat there, watching. A waiter passed by and I caught his attention. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice low. "The guy in the black suit over there, do you know if he's waiting for someone?" The waiter glanced over his shoulder, his brow furrowing slightly. "Him?" "Yeah." The waiter hesitated. "He's been here for hours, ordered 1 glass of wine, hasn't touched it." A chill ran through me. For hours. Since before my shift started. I swallowed hard. Is he bothering you? I wanted to say yes, but I couldn't explain why. The guy hadn't done anything. He was just sitting there, watching. No, I said, just weird. The waiter nodded and moved on. I turned my attention back to the man, but he was gone. The chair was empty. The untouched glass of wine still sat on the table. I exhaled slowly, rolling my shoulders as if I could shake off the unease settling in my chest. Maybe I'd been overthinking it. Maybe he had just left. Natalie finally noticed my distraction. Seriously, what's going on? I hesitated. There was a guy sitting back there. I gestured toward the empty table. Black suit, watching us. She glanced over her shoulder, then back at me. And I don't know, he was staring. The waiter said he'd been here for hours. Her lips pressed into a thin line. That's creepy. I nodded, suddenly feeling ridiculous. The guy was gone. The night wasn't ruined. I reached for my wine glass, ready to move on. Then the waiter returned and slid something onto the table next to my plate. A small, folded napkin. What's this? I asked. It's from that man, the waiter said. He asked me to give it to you. I frowned and unfolded the napkin. My pulse quickened as I read the message. What's your offer? For a moment I didn't understand. Then my stomach twisted into knots. I looked up, scanning the restaurant. The man wasn't at his table anymore, but I spotted him standing near the exit, waiting. Natalie must have seen the shift in my expression. Marco, what does it say? I shoved the napkin into my pocket and stood abruptly. We need to leave. She frowned. What? Why? I don't like this place. Let's go. She looked confused, but didn't argue. I threw a couple of bills on the table, grabbed my coat, and took her hand. The moment we moved, the man stepped forward, blocking our way. Leaving already? His voice was smooth, almost friendly. I positioned myself slightly in front of Natalie. Yeah, we are. He smiled. A shame. I was hoping to make a business proposal. I clenched my fists. Not interested. He watched me closely, then his attention shifted to Natalie. That smirk spread across his face. Are you sure? A shiver crawled down my spine. I grabbed Natalie's hand and pushed past him. To my relief, he didn't follow. But as we stepped out onto the street, I could still feel his eyes on us. We walked fast, weaving through the crowd of tourists and couples. I didn't stop until we reached the parking lot, my chest tight with adrenaline. Get in the car, I said. Natalie didn't move. Marco, what the hell is going on? Who was that guy? I pulled out the napkin and handed it to her. She read it, her face draining of color. What does this mean? I don't know, I said, and I don't want to find out. I started the car, checking the rearview mirror. No sign of him. Still, I drove in the opposite direction of my apartment, weaving through different streets, making sure we weren't being followed. Only when we were miles away did I let out a breath. We never saw him again. But that note still haunts me. Not because of what it said, but because I'll never know what he was actually offering, and what would have happened if I had given him an answer. I never thought Valentine's Day could be terrifying. It was supposed to be romantic. A quiet night with Lucas, my boyfriend of nearly 2 years. I had never been big on the holiday, but he was the kind of guy who thrived on grand gestures. This year he promised something special, something different. A gothic kind of romance, he called it. I should have known then. Lucas had always been intense, passionate, in a way that made me feel like the center of his universe. At first, it was flattering. The deep stares, the way he always knew where I was, how he'd show up unexpectedly to take me to lunch. But as time passed, that passion turned possessive. He started questioning my male friends, subtly guilt-tripping me for wanting space. It was always disguised as love, so when he suggested we take a midnight walk through an old cemetery in Salem, I hesitated. It felt strange, but he spun it as poetic. Love that lasts beyond death, he said. Something that can never be taken away. I agreed. That was my mistake. The cemetery was one of the oldest in Massachusetts, its iron gates barely locked, the stone paths worn by centuries of visitors. Fog curled around the tombstones, making them look like they were floating. The air was crisp, silent except for our footsteps crunching over dead leaves. Lucas held my hand tightly, his grip a little too firm. "This is beautiful," he murmured, his breath warm against my ear. "Don't you think?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, it's peaceful." We walked deeper into the graveyard, past headstones so old the names had been worn away. I started to shiver, not just from the cold. And then I saw it, a bouquet of fresh red roses, lying neatly on a grave. At first it seemed sweet, some heartbroken lover leaving flowers for someone they lost. But then I saw the note, and my name written on it. I felt my stomach drop. Slowly I reached for the card, my fingers trembling as I opened it. "So, you'll never leave me. Ever!" My breath caught in my throat. I turned to Lucas, my heart pounding. "What the hell is this?" He was watching me, his expression blank, then, He smirked. "You like it?" My hands started shaking. "Is this a joke?" He shrugged. "It's poetic, don't you think?" "This isn't romantic, Lucas." My voice cracked. "It's terrifying." His face darkened. Am I good? Because I don't want to lose you?" I took a step back, but he grabbed my wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to make me stop. "You always ruin things," he said, his grip tightening. "I do something meaningful, and you don't even appreciate it." I yanked my arm away, my pulse thundering. "You left a note on a grave with my name on it, Lucas. How did you expect me to react?" Silence. For a moment, I thought he was going to do something. His jaw clenched. His fingers curled into fists. Then, just like that, he exhaled and smiled. "Fine," he said. "Let's go." We walked back in silence. Every step, I kept him in my peripheral vision. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I didn't want to set him off. Not here, not when we were still surrounded by darkness and tombstones. When we reached the gate, I let out a breath of relief. "I'll take you home," he said. "No," I kept my voice firm. "I'll get an Uber." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're overreacting." I didn't respond. I pulled out my phone and called for a ride, refusing to look up until I saw the headlights approaching. Only then did I step away. Lucas watched me get in the car, his expression calm, composed, like nothing had happened. "See you soon," he said. I shut the door without answering. I didn't go home that night. I went straight to my friend Audrey's apartment, shaking as I told her everything. "You need to block him," she said, horrified. "Now." So I did. Blocked his number, his social media, told my friends, my coworkers, I was done. But Lucas wasn't. The next few days he showed up at my apartment, knocking for hours. He left voicemails, long-winded messages about how I was making a mistake, how he just wanted to talk. Then the text started. Different numbers, different accounts. "You can't just disappear. We were meant to be. You know I won't stop." The final straw came when Audrey called me from work. "He came here," she said, her voice shaking, "asking where you were." That night I went to the police, filed for a restraining order. Lucas never showed up again, not at my place, not at work, just like that. He was gone, but I never felt safe. For weeks I kept waiting for something, a message, a call, a glimpse of him in a crowd, but nothing ever came. Eventually I convinced myself that it was over. It's been 3 years. I moved to a new city, changed my number again. I don't post personal updates online. I don't check old accounts, but sometimes, when I walk past a storefront window or glance at a reflection in a train door, I swear I see him, just for a second, watching, waiting. And every Valentine's Day, without fail, a single red rose appears outside my door. No note, no explanation, just waiting for me to find it. I never put much faith in dating apps, but after my last relationship ended, I figured, why not? Everyone else was doing it, and I was tired of spending my nights tending bar and watching couples get drunk off overpriced cocktails. That's how I met Aaron. His profile seemed normal enough. good smile, decent taste in music, worked in finance. He wasn't my usual type, but he was charming over text, funny in a way that didn't feel forced. We started chatting on a Monday, and by Wednesday we were talking every day. At first it was harmless. He asked about my favorite bars, my dog, what my ideal Valentine's Day looked like. But the more we talked, the more something felt off. His messages came too frequently, like he was always waiting for me to reply. He asked strangely specific questions. When I worked, when I got off, where I liked to go after a shift. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to curiosity. Then came the possessiveness. "I bet you get hit on all the time at work," he said. "Must be exhausting." I laughed it off. "Yeah, comes with the job." "But you don't give those guys attention, right?" Red flag. I didn't respond right away, and he followed up. "I just don't want you around creeps." And that was it. My gut told me to stop talking to him. So I unmatched him. And I thought that was the end of it. 2 days later, I noticed a new follower on my Instagram. No profile picture, no posts, just a blank account. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something about the timing unsettled me. I blocked the account. Then, on Valentine's Day, I got a text from an unknown number. "Look outside." I stared at it, confused. A spam message? A prank? Then another. "Happy Valentine's Day, beautiful." I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut told me exactly who it was. I didn't respond. A new message popped up. "That dress looks good on you." My blood ran cold. I was wearing a dress, right then. At work. I whipped my head toward the entrance, scanning the bar. It was busy, filled with couples celebrating, a few regulars, no one unusual. My heart pounded as I checked my phone again. "Smile for me." I didn't. Instead, I turned, ducking behind the bar, pretending to check something on the bottom shelf. My hands were shaking. I showed the texts to my coworker, Lisa. "You sure it's him?" she asked. "Who else could it be?" She frowned. "You need to be careful, seriously." I put on my best customer-friendly smile and nodded, but my thoughts were anything but calm. How did he get my number? How did he know what I was wearing? Then it hit me. My social media. My Instagram was public. Pictures of my dog at the park, drinks at my favorite bar, selfies in front of my apartment building. A photo from that morning in the very dress I was wearing. Captioned, "Valentine's shift. Come grab a drink." He had pieced together where I worked, followed the trail I'd left online, and now he was here. My shift ended at midnight. Lisa insisted on walking me to my car, and I was too shaken to deny her. The parking lot was mostly empty, just a few scattered vehicles. My car was parked near the back, where the security lights didn't quite reach. As we got closer, Lisa tensed up. "Is that someone by your car?" I followed her gaze, and my stomach dropped. A shadow stood next to my driver's side door, unmoving. I sucked in a breath. The figure shifted just slightly, and in the dim glow of a distant streetlight, I saw the grin. Aaron. Lisa let out a low curse and grabbed my arm. "We're not going to your car." We turned and power-walked back toward the bar. I refused to look back, but I could feel him watching. The second we stepped inside, Lisa locked the door. "We're calling the cops." I couldn't argue. By the time they arrived, Aaron was gone. I thought that would be the end of it, but over the next few days, I noticed strange things. A car parked near my building that I didn't recognize. A silhouette lingering at the corner when I walked my dog. A bouquet of red roses left outside my door. No note, no sender, just waiting for me to find them. The texts continued. Random numbers, short messages. "Why won't you talk to me? You can't ignore me forever." I blocked every number, but they kept coming. Lisa had me stay at her place. Even though I felt safer with someone else around, I couldn't relax. Then one night, the messages stopped, and that terrified me more than anything. It had been a week since the last text. I had finally gone back home, still on edge, but convincing myself it was over. Then at 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A single notification. A picture. It was grainy and dark, but I knew exactly what it was. My apartment window. I called the police immediately. By the time they arrived, there was no sign of him. I filed another report, locked down my social media, changed my phone number. The police told me to stay vigilant, but they couldn't do much. Aaron hadn't technically committed a crime. I packed a bag and left that night. Lisa didn't even ask questions when I showed up at her place, shaking. She just pulled me into a hug and told me to stay as long as I needed. I took her up on it. Days turned into weeks. Every time I stepped outside, I felt like I was being watched. Every time my phone buzzed, I jumped. I barely slept, jolting awake at the slightest noise. Lisa did her best to reassure me. And then one night, it stopped. No more messages, no more pictures, no calls from random numbers. Just silence. At first, I was relieved, but then relief turned to paranoia. Had he lost interest? Found someone else? Or was he just waiting for me to let my guard down? I wasn't going to take any chances. I never went back to that apartment. Lisa and I searched for a new place together, somewhere with a security system, somewhere he wouldn't know to look. It took a while, but we found one, a fresh start, a place where I didn't feel like I had to keep my blinds shut 24/7. But even now, I find myself scanning the street. Even now, I hesitate before posting anything online, because the truth is, he was never just some random guy on a dating app. He was a reminder that sometimes the scariest people aren't lurking in dark alleys. Sometimes they're the ones who already know exactly where you live. Valentine's Day was never a big deal to me. I wasn't the kind of guy who needed roses, chocolates, or a candlelit dinner to feel loved. But this year, I had someone special, Kara. We had only been dating for a few months, but it felt different. She was kind, easygoing, and never pressured me into making grand gestures. When I suggested a quiet night at my apartment with homemade dinner and a bottle of wine, she smiled and said, "That sounds perfect." I lived in an old high-rise in Denver, the kind of building that had character but also came with flickering hallway lights and creaky pipes. My unit was on the 5th floor, and for as long as I'd lived there, the apartment directly above mine had been vacant. At least that's what my landlord always said. Lately, though, I had been hearing noises, soft footsteps, furniture scraping against the floor, a faint creaking like someone was pacing late at night. I had chalked it up to the building settling, but that night as Kara and I ate dinner, the noises started again, slow, deliberate, footsteps moving across the ceiling. She paused, fork halfway to her mouth. "I thought you said no one lived upstairs." "I did," I said, trying to sound casual, but my stomach twisted. The footsteps stopped. Then came the sound of something heavy dragging across the floor. Kara put down her fork. "That's not normal." I exhaled, forcing a laugh. "It's probably just the building shifting." She gave me a look. "That's not the building. That's someone moving furniture." I didn't want to admit it, but she was right. Something was up there. After dinner, we curled up on the couch with a movie, but my mind kept drifting back to the apartment above us. The building was old, sure, but the noises had never been this obvious. Then, around midnight, I heard it again. Creak. A slow, steady step. Then another, and another. Kara sat up. "It's right above us." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Then came the sound of furniture moving, a slow scrape against the floor, like someone was dragging something heavy right over our heads. I grabbed my phone. "I'm calling the landlord." He picked up on the third ring, groggy and irritated. "Evan, do you have any idea what time it is?" "Yeah, sorry," I said quickly. Listen, are you sure no one lives in 6B? Silence. Then, why? I hesitated. Because I've been hearing noises, loud noises, like furniture moving, like footsteps. Someone's up there. He sighed. "Evan, 6B has been empty for over a year. No one's lived there since the old tenant moved out. I still have the keys. It's locked up tight." I felt a chill creep down my spine. "There's no one up there," he said. "It's probably just the pipes." A loud thud echoed from the ceiling. Kara gasped. "That sound like pipes to you?" I asked. The landlord was quiet. Then, hesitantly, he said, "I'll come by first thing in the morning to check it out." That didn't help me now. At 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. I shot up, my heart pounding. Kara stirred beside me. "What's wrong?" I held my breath. The apartment was silent, but something felt wrong. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could and crept toward the door. The hallway light was still on. Everything looked normal. Then I noticed something. The ceiling hatch to the attic crawl space, the one that connected to 6B, was slightly open, a dark gap where it should have been shut tight. My stomach twisted. I stepped closer. That's when I saw it. A chair, right under the hatch, and sitting on the chair, a Polaroid picture. I reached for it with trembling fingers, flipping it over. It was us, me and Kara, sitting on the couch eating dinner. The photo was taken from above, from the apartment upstairs. I staggered back. Kara whispered, "Evan, what is that?" I turned to her, barely able to breathe. "We need to get out of here." She didn't ask questions. She grabbed her phone, her keys, her shoes. We ran out the door, down 5 flights of stairs and into the freezing Denver night. I called the landlord again, my voice shaking. "Someone's in 6B. By the time the police arrived, the apartment upstairs was empty. No furniture, no footprints, no signs of anyone ever being there. But the chair was still there. And so was the Polaroid. No fingerprints, no explanation, just the knowledge that someone had been watching us, and they were close enough to take a picture. Lydia had worked as a rideshare driver in Chicago for 3 years, and she thought she'd seen it all. Drunken couples arguing in the back seat, sketchy late-night passengers who reeked of booze and bad decisions, even a guy who threw up in her car and tried to blame it on his evil twin. But nothing compared to what happened on Valentine's Day last year. It had been a busy night, bars overflowing with couples celebrating love, restaurants packed with first dates and failed proposals. Around midnight, the requests started slowing down. She considered calling it a night when another ride popped up. Passenger, David. Pickup location, West Loop. Destination, 10 minutes away. Short ride, easy money. She accepted the request and pulled up to the pickup location. A man was already standing on the curb, waiting. He was tall, maybe early 40s, wearing a dark jacket over a crisp white shirt. The weird thing was, he looked nothing like the profile photo on the app. The photo had shown a younger man, clean-shaven with a different haircut. Lydia hesitated, her fingers hovering over the cancel ride button. Before she could press it, the man opened the door and slid into the back seat. "David?" she asked, glancing at him through the rearview mirror. He didn't answer at first, just sat there, staring straight ahead. Then, in a low voice, he said, "Just drive." A chill crept up Lydia's spine. Something was off. She started driving, trying to shake the feeling, but after a few minutes, she noticed something strange. The GPS kept rerouting. She checked her phone. The original drop-off location had disappeared. The app now showed no destination. Her fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "Where are you headed?" she asked. The man didn't answer. She glanced at the mirror. He was still staring forward, completely still. Lydia's heart pounded. This wasn't normal. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "David, I need a drop-off address." Silence. Then, finally, he spoke. "You believe in fate?" Lydia's blood ran cold. "What?" she forced out. The man's lips curled into the faintest smile. "Do you think we end up exactly where we're meant to be?" Lydia's grip on the wheel tightened. "Listen, if you don't tell me where you're going, I'm ending this ride." She reached for her phone to cancel, but before she could touch it, the screen went black. The app crashed, no signal. She stole another glance at the mirror. The man was looking at her now, watching, waiting. Her pulse thundered. The street they were on was dark, abandoned. No cars, no pedestrians, just endless stretches of warehouses and factories. This was wrong. She had to get out of there. Without a word, she slammed her foot on the gas. The car lurched forward. The man's smile didn't falter. "Going somewhere?" Lydia didn't answer. She sped through the empty streets, scanning for signs of life. A gas station, a police station, anything. Then she saw it. A dead-end street. She slammed on the brakes, tires screeching against the pavement. She turned, heart pounding. "Get out of my car!" The man leaned forward slightly. "Are you afraid?" Lydia reached for her door handle. "I said get out." The man's expression remained eerily calm. "I thought you liked taking people where they need to go." He leaned closer. Lydia shoved the door open and bolted. She ran. Didn't look back, didn't stop. She sprinted down the street, lungs burning, until she reached a gas station at the corner. She burst inside, breathless. The clerk looked up, startled. "Hey, you okay?" Lydia turned, expecting to see the man behind her, but he was gone. Later, when she checked the app, something chilled her to the bone. There was no record of the ride, no passenger named David, no pickup location, no canceled trip. It was like it had never happened. But Lydia knew it had, and when she checked the dashcam footage the next morning, her stomach dropped. The footage showed her car, the drive, the dead-end street. But the back seat? It was empty. No sign of the man. No sign of anyone at all. Love isn't always sweet. Sometimes it's terrifying. The 6 stories you just heard weren't about ghosts or haunted houses. They were about something far more chilling. Real people. Obsession disguised as romance. Strangers who watch from the shadows. Encounters that start off normal but twist into something out of a nightmare. Each of these stories teaches a lesson, a warning about the dangers that can come with trust, dating, and even simple human interaction. Jake learned the hard way that some people don't just admire from afar. They follow. The silent admirer reminds us to be careful who we let into our lives, and to never ignore the feeling that something is off. Marco's elegant Valentine's dinner turned into something sinister, proving that not all threats are loud. Some sit in plain sight, waiting for the right moment. If a situation makes you uneasy, trust your instincts. Get out. Becca discovered that love can turn possessive, and in some cases, even dangerous. If someone makes you feel trapped instead of safe, run. No matter how much history you share, no one has the right to control you. Chloe's story is a warning about oversharing online. Social media makes it easy to be watched without even realizing it. Be mindful of what you post, because you never know who's watching. Evan's quiet Valentine's night was shattered by the realization that he was being observed from above. If something doesn't add up, don't dismiss it as your imagination. Investigate. And Lydia, she picked up the wrong passenger. Sometimes the unknown is the scariest thing of all. Stay safe. Trust your gut. And remember, love isn't always what it seems. Thank you for watching Enigma of the Unknown. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have your own unsettling Valentine story, let us know in the comments.